Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan. We're here with part 2 of our 4-part series, podcast series, previewing the NFC East. We did Dallas in our last one with Greg Cosell, and Greg Cosell is back again, as he will be with us through the entire series. And for this episode, we will preview Washington, the defending NFC East champion, Washington football team. So we will get into that, diagnose them, get Greg's insights on tape breakdown, and really get through that team and how they were able to win the division last year. Before we get into that, I do want to remind people to check out our interview, whether it's through podcast or YouTube, that we did with Paul Domowitch earlier in the week, the longtime Eagles reporter and NFL columnist for the Philadelphia Daily News. He had some great stories to share with us, and it was just really nice to have Paul on. He's retiring, as most people will know, just like Les Bowen has. So two icons in the Philadelphia media are leaving us. Obviously, there'll be some new blood, but it was nice to get up with Paul and give us some time to talk about his time covering the Philadelphia Eagles. We are not going to be talking much Eagles in this podcast. We've got Washington to break down. They were certainly a nemesis for the Eagles last year, and we'll get into that a little bit, especially that last game that still leaves a lot of people, I guess, with some sore taste in their mouth with seeing Nate Sudfeld go in there and replacing Jalen Hurts and everything like that. I know the Giants fans weren't happy about it, but it's a new season and a lot more to break down. Greg, are you ready to take us into the film room on this Washington team?
Yeah, Washington's a fascinating team, actually.
Right. I know I said in the last podcast where we were talking about the Cowboys and how explosive their offense is, and here we are talking about Washington, almost an entirely different kind of team. Day and night, this team is really built around its defense right now.
Well, they've got a really good front four. They've got 4 first-round picks. They're really good. Obviously, they lost Ryan Kerrigan, who's now with the Eagles. But when you look at Chase Young and Montez Sweat at the end, when you look at Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen inside, and we'll get to this player in more detail, but they drafted Jamin Davis in the first round, and he was actually one of my favorite defensive players to watch. He's out of Kentucky. I knew nothing about him when I put on the tape, and I thought he was a really, really good prospect. And to this day, I'm mad at myself for not saying when I spoke about him that I thought he was a first-round player, and obviously Ron Rivera and his group thought so.
Yeah, so the rich got richer there for defense. If Jamin Davis turns out to be a really good player, so we'll get into that. I want to ask you about just overall the coaching staff and what you witnessed from them from a scheme standpoint. First, I want to remind everybody: don't be a loser. Don't pay full retail price for things you want and need. Get on Deal Dash. Go to DealDash.com. Use the Deal Dash app, and when you register, use the promo code ITB for a special offer for some bonus free bids. That's ITB to get bonus free bids when you register with Deal Dash or download the Deal Dash app. So obviously, there was so much turmoil with Washington from top to bottom last year. And then, they hire Ron Rivera, and then he brings in Jack Del Rio, 2 veteran coaches, Greg, who have their scheme, have their style, and have, a way about them where they know what they want to do as soon as they get somewhere. So what were the differences you saw in Washington, just watching them schematically? What do you think those 2 guys really brought to the franchise last year?
Well, I think for the most part, they play to their strengths. They know that their defensive line is really good. I think they were effective blitzing selectively. I thought, and this is a player who ended up, I really liked, and he became a major part of what they did, and that's Cameron Curl, who replaced the injured Landon Collins. And quite frankly, I thought he played better than Landon Collins, and I thought he was a really effective player. They used him at times before Collins got hurt. They often used Curl as a slot corner, and then when Collins got hurt, they moved Curl to the safety spot, and he played safety. So I don't know what their plan is this year. I mean, Collins is back. They could play Collins and Curl at safety and be their starters, because Curl showed a ton of versatility, and the ability to do a lot of things was used very effectively in their blitz packages. So, but it's a defense built predominantly on their down 4, and it's arguably one of the best down 4s in the league. Young, of course, gets a ton of talk because he's Chase Young, but these 2 D tackles are really, really good players. Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, when they're in their sub front, those guys can win one-on-one against offensive guards.
So, Greg, let's stay on defense. You mentioned Jamin Davis, I know a guy you'd like. I talked to you a couple months ago, and you were talking about him. The word in personnel circles was he's sort of an emerging player. He had the one season of outstanding tape where he left you wanting to see more, which is a good thing.
Right, right.
How do you think they'll use him at linebacker? How does he project at the NFL level?
Well, first of all, he's 6'3 plus. He's 235 pounds. He's a very good athlete. He's long. He's rangy. He can play in your sub because he can play pass defense. I think what you'll see him. I would expect him to be a starter, and I think he'll play in the base and the sub, and he'll be a stack backer. And I think that's what he is. And he's just a different kind of player because of his size and his length. There's not many 6'3 plus linebackers at him in this league. And he's a very athletic guy. He made an interception. I'm trying to remember who was against, maybe Tennessee. I could be wrong, where he dropped into underneath zone coverage and he reached for the ball like a wide receiver and then ran 75, 80 yards for a touchdown. He's a very athletic kid.
So if you're staying on the linebackers, we're not sure if he's going to be a middle or an outside when they're in base. I mean, how did Boston?
Well, he'll be, a lot of these teams that are 4-3, that designation is not super important if they're all going to be stacked, because ultimately if you're stacked, you're reading similar keys, right? So I think Bostic would more than likely, if you're really being precise and in their base 4-3 front, particularly if they go 4-3 stack, my guess is Bostic would be the guy in the middle, and Davis and Holcomb would be the outside linebackers.
What do you think of Holcomb?
I thought he played well last year.
Me too.
He was a kid out of North Carolina. He tested really well. I don't believe he was a combine invitee, if I'm not mistaken. But I thought he played well. He was another guy that was used very effectively in their blitz packages. Very often they blitz Holcomb and Curl as part of their 5-man pressures, and they would drop out a D lineman. And I thought Holcomb played well.
Greg, in the secondary, they've got the change there with Ronald Darby, who kind of revived his career, got a really nice deal with Denver, and now they've got William Jackson to replace him. William Jackson's a former first-round pick of the Bengals.
Yeah.
What kind of player has he been for you on tape?
I think William Jackson I think his strength is man-to-man coverage. He's long, he's athletic, he can run. I think that as many teams evolve defensively and see how the league is evolving with more and more quick game, RPOs, you have to be able to play press man, because if you're going to give wide receivers free releases in these quick games, you're just giving up completions, because now what you have to do is somehow disrupt routes, because if the ball's out that quickly, your pass rush isn't going to get there. Now, again, we're not talking 3rd and long. That's a different scenario, but we're talking just in the context of normal down and distance offense. There's more RPOs, more quick game throws, quick three-step drops, quick 5-step, hard for your pass rush to get there. So what do you have to do? You've got to disrupt routes, and you can't disrupt routes playing off coverage. You can't disrupt routes with your corner playing with a 7-yard cushion. So you need press man corners. And I think William Jackson is very good as a press man corner. He's got all the traits to do that.
So they kind of traded out Ronald Darby, who went to Denver, right, for William Jackson.
He's a better player than Darby.
That's what I was going to get at. Does he excel at what you just spoke at more so than Darby?
Yes, he's a better player than Darby. He's long, he's athletic, he can run. William Jackson's, when you play in Cincinnati, not a lot of people talk about you, obviously, but William Jackson is a good player.
Interesting. I mean, that gives him real, Greg, when you look at the big picture, we already know they have a dominant front four. The kid, Jamin Davis, gives him a real athletic function at linebacker. We have yet to see how he's going to play, but he is a first-round
pick. And again, he's a rookie, so you don't know, but it's the traits. He's long and he's athletic. They weren't drafting a grinder. They were drafting a guy who can play in their sub.
Right. And then, of course, at the secondary level, to have a guy like William Jackson, and then, of course, Landon Collins will come back, but you even like Cameron Curl.
Cameron Curl plays
as much.
To me, I mean, I'm not grading every play like coaches do, but to me, he played really, really well, Geoff.
Right. As a 7th rounder. Wow.
Yeah. And they still have Kendall Fuller, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. So, and I think Jimmy Moreland's a nice slot player too. I think I think this is a good defense from top to bottom.
I was going to say, this sounds like a defense that can stake its claim for maybe the best or one of the best in the NFL.
Yeah, much depends on Davis. And they drafted him in the first round. I believe the 19th or 20th pick at him, right? Somewhere around there.
I think it was 19th. Yeah.
19th. Yep.
Yeah. And so they didn't draft him to say, oh, you're going to learn for a year. They drafted him to play, certainly in their sub.
Sure. Real quick, before we finish off defense, I would like you to compare for me a little bit how Chase Young and Montez Sweat, because I don't know that, they're two great pass rushers, but they use them differently. They're built a little bit differently. How do you see them?
They're different. I mean, Young to me is, and I've stood next to Chase Young. I've not stood next to Montez Sweat, but Chase Young just really looks the part. I mean, I think Chase Young has every trait you would look for in an edge player. I mean, he's just a dominant player. What more can you say? I mean, he's got every trait you would want. Sweat's a little, I don't want to say Sweat is stiff because that is too negative, but he's not quite as loose as Young is. Mm-hmm. He's a great athlete, though. I mean, if you recall, Sweat tested exceptionally well at the combine, almost off the charts.
Right. Long arms too, right? Doesn't he?
Yeah. He's long. I would say he's not quite as loose and as flexible as Young, but he's still a really good player. But I love Daron Payne. I mean, these interior guys are really, they're tough to handle. And because they're so athletic, you know what it allows you to do, which you can't do with all inside guys, is it allows you to do a lot of inside stunts. And those are tough to deal with because those guys can bend a little bit. A lot of tackles, even good D tackles, are not benders, but Daron Payne can bend.
Greg, as we turn our attention to the offense, just talking to teams for free agency, a lot of teams like Ryan Fitzpatrick, but when you've been on as many teams as he's been on, and at his age, you kind of know who he is as a quarterback. So you studied him for many, many years. You've evaluated this quarterback. What does he look like to you? What did he look like to you last season?
Well, I think the best way to talk about Fitzpatrick is this. Fitzpatrick, more often than not, has been on teams that have not been really good, correct?
Yes.
And he does have an aggressive mentality. So what Fitzpatrick has always felt the need to do is to be aggressive and make plays. And he's had some big time wideouts on the outside where he could throw the ball to them and feel comfortable doing that. So when you're really aggressive as a thrower and you feel like you've got to score 25, 30 points every single game, often you'll make some throws that are the head scratching throws. And he's been that way throughout his career. My guess is, given the nature of their defense and the fact that they have Antonio Gibson, who I think is and we'll get to him in a minute. Yep. My guess is they are working very hard with him this offseason with Scott Turner, with a veteran QB coach and Kenny Sampisi, been around for a long time, to really play within the structure and the belief that you don't have to do any of that. Now, we don't know how that will play out, but he's not going to have to make unbelievable throws all the time. The defense will keep the game close. They'll run the ball. If you look at Terry McLaurin as a number one, and, he borders on that. He doesn't have the size you'd ultimately like in a true number one. But if you look at him as a number one, they don't really have that guy in the perimeter that you can just throw the ball up to. So the point is, let's let the offense work. And this is a term no one likes to hear, but every quarterback, if he's going to be good, is this guy. Let's let the system work. Mm-hmm. And I think they're really working with Fitzpatrick to play that way, as opposed to feeling like, hey, I've got to go out and score 30 and I've got to make big time throws every possession.
Right. You just wonder, with him being the quarterback of so many, mediocre to worse teams for so long and having to play that way, if that's so ingrained in him that it becomes difficult to then just ask him to manage it and play more carefully.
And again, we don't know that's what we don't know the answer to.
Right.
But I guarantee, without being there, that's what they're trying to do. Because this is a team, we know their defense is going to keep things together. Mm-hmm. We know Gibson is a back who's got the size to be a true foundation back. He's 228, 230 pounds. We can get to the O-line in a sec. There are some questions there, clearly, mm-hmm. but they're going to want to run the football. I mean, Gibson will be the guy. they've got some other guys too. I mean, the thing is Peyton Barber can certainly carry the ball. We don't know what Lamar Miller has. You know, we don't know the answer to that. J.D. McKissick is probably a package guy. I use him in specific packages, but he's an interesting player. So they've got some weapons in the backfield that can be used in multiple ways, but Gibson will clearly be the number one back.
Adam, I want to ask you about Gibson real quick for an update, because I know that there are some concerns about an injury he had last year.
Turf toe.
Before we get into that, I want to remind everybody, DraftKings Sportsbook is not only our favorite sportsbook, but also America's top-rated sportsbook. We love using DraftKings Sportsbook. Easy to navigate, plenty of instructions for new bettors, nearly limitless ways to get in on all of the action. Our friends and family have been loving DraftKings Sportsbook, and we know that you will too. So listen to this great offer. DraftKings Sportsbook is putting you courtside with a chance to turn $1 into $100 in site credits. That's right. You pick any basketball team still in contention, and you bet $1. And if that team wins, you win $100 in site credits. Don't forget, DraftKings Sportsbook also offers great odds and promotions on baseball, hockey, and so much more all week long. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable, so you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. So download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code ITB when you sign up to turn $1 into $100 in free credits. Bet on the basketball team of your choice to win its next game. If it happens, you get $100 in free credits. That's promo code ITB for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. You got to be 21 or older. Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Wager paid out in site credits. Restrictions apply in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Okay, so getting back to Washington, and we know how important, as Greg just outlined, that the running game is to Ron Rivera, and how good Antonio Gibson looked for a guy who played a lot of slot receiver in college and then really started to take the shape of a running back in the NFL who can catch passes as well. But obviously he had an injury, right? A turf toe injury, Adam?
Yeah. So I noticed some of the media, I guess they either talked to him or referenced it that maybe he was still dealing with it. That's a little surprising. I know turf toe could be really bad, so it's something I'll be looking into as we get closer to training camp. But Greg's right, and Geoff and I had on Inside the Birds about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We had Ryan Silverfield on, the head coach of Memphis, and Greg. The thing that it's really funny. Silverfield goes, most people don't know this, but we recruited him. Well, I don't know wherever he was. He at a junior college, Geoff? I forget.
I thought he said at JUCO. Yeah.
Right. And the thing, he goes, when he came to us, he's a 6'1", 235 slot receiver. He goes, you don't find many of those guys, so we had to figure out something else with him.
Right.
And this is when they had Darrell Henderson and Patrick Taylor, who we mentioned. I forgot about him. And some other backs. So they found a way. So Greg, his first full year at running back, were you kind of surprised? I know you were intrigued by him, but how good did he look like to you on tape?
I think he was up and down, but I think you saw the traits. I think that when you lack experience as a runner, and a lot of people don't think about running backs this way, but they have to understand fronts. It's easy to say, hey, just give a guy a ball and let him do his God-given ability. And that's fine. At some point that does happen, but in the NFL in particular, and there's certain backs who I feel are very good at this. Like I thought Cam Akers was outstanding at this, both in college, and I thought he was good at it last year in his first year in the league. But you have to understand fronts, because when you get a play call, let's say it's zone, there's someone you have to read. You always have to be aware of if there's an unblocked defender. Where is the unblocked defender? You don't want to cut right into the unblocked defender. So you have to understand fronts. You have to understand how things are, how your O-line is going to block based on what the front looks like. As I said, you have to understand the second level players and who's going to come. Is a safety going to come down and be an unblocked player? These are things you have to. They take practice.
Right.
Obviously at some point, maybe after 3 steps, 4 steps, whatever it is, hey, if you understand all that, then your God-given ability takes over. But these are things you have to learn and practice. And I thought that he had some nice runs, some big runs, but I also thought that he had a lot of, negative runs and 1-yard runs. And I would expect to see less of those this year.
Yeah. I don't want to, I certainly don't want to belabor the potential, the turf toe or whatever he has, or over dramatized, but because this offense is not, flashy at a lot of positions and not superstar laden. And he was such a big piece of what they did last year. I do like Peyton Barber as a backup. McKissick's nice, but I mean, I do feel like his health and him being able to capitalize, Greg, or carry over, I should say, what he did last year and build on those things that running backs need to know is really kind of cardinal for this team to have some success.
Yeah. But the big question becomes their O-line. That's the issue. Because they've made some changes. You know, Charles Leno, who the Bears cut,
Right.
And did not have a good year last year, but has played well in the league. I mean, he did not have a good year last year. Obviously, their feeling is, hey, new environment, maybe coach differently, maybe he can line up and play. I mean, even at his best, he's not a top 3-4 tackle in the league, but at his best, you can line up and play with Charles Leno. The question is, can he get to that point again? You know, I think Flowers has been okay inside. You know, he certainly couldn't play tackle. He was bad there, but I think he's been okay. I think the center is Roulier is solid. Sheriff's a really good player. Right tackle's a concern. I mean, that's clearly a concern. So
they drafted the kid.
They drafted the kid out of Texas, Cosme.
Yeah.
He was a left tackle in college. He's long. He's athletic. To me, he was more of a finesse player. He wasn't soft, but his body type was such that I thought he played more of a finesse game. It's not that he wasn't physical or didn't try to be, so I don't want to give the wrong impression. But I'm curious as to how they see him. Like, do they feel he was a left tackle in college? And I don't know where he lined up in OTAs, Adam. You may know.
Yeah, I had heard he did some left, but the belief is, in the end, he's going to have to be right tackle. Now, when I say that, Charles Leno, I do want to make one point here, because you were talking about, Greg, what you saw on tape. I had a team tell me after Chicago cut him, they were looking at him, that he was so poor, they felt if they signed him, they'd have to have a tight end on the side quite a bit to help him out. So much he struggled. That's not good.
No, and if that's, I mean, again, like I said, he didn't play well last year. I think everybody in the league knows that. Like you said, you just have to see the tape, and that's what people look at. But, you know, I think right now, what they would love to have happen is Leno to be the left tackle and play to his ability, and Cosme be the right tackle, because right now at right tackle, they don't really have anybody who you would feel really good about lining up, you know, week one.
What about the tight end position? Adam just mentioned, and you guys were talking about whether they could be a 2 tight end or a 3 wide receiver offense. I mean, they have, I mean, Logan Ryan, we talk about, it was a really nice, Logan Thomas was a really nice story of development. I think he had 10, what did he have, 10 touchdowns last year? I know he had a couple, I think he had a 10 catch game as well. I mean, he really started to come on as a receiving tight end at the end of the year, Greg, but do they have a guy who can block at that position? I mean, if they wanted to play 12 personnel or go big, are they equipped for that given their offensive line issues?
Well, they drafted John Bates in the 4th round, and I think they feel he can fill that role. They also signed Deion Yelder as a free agent who was with the Chiefs a year ago and got some snaps. And I actually watched him in college, and I thought he could play in the league. They really like Logan Thomas. They think that this year he'll be even better. Now, again, the blocking part, that's, you know, obviously he doesn't have a whole lot of experience doing that because he was a quarterback growing up. But they feel that Thomas can really take another step forward. He's, you know, for a tight end, he's pretty athletic. He's big. I think they see him as a really important part of this offense going forward.
Greg, getting back to receiver, I know a guy you like pre-draft, and it's Diami Brown from North Carolina.
Yeah.
Give us an idea, give our listeners an idea of what he looked like to you on tape and how you think he could fit in with this offense.
Yeah, he's an interesting player to me. I mean, he was a vertical receiver in college at North Carolina. He ran by college corners pretty consistently. So, but yet when I watched him, I wasn't sure if he could do that at the NFL level. And say what you want about 40 times, he did not run a great 40 at his pro day. And I'm not saying that validates what I said. You don't have to be a 4.35 guy to be able to catch vertical passes. So my question is, can he be that guy in the league? I thought he improved dramatically because I watched his 2019 tape as well. I thought he improved dramatically in other areas of receiving, and I thought he was far more effective running intermediate routes in his last year in North Carolina, and in a Scott Turner offense, which is very much based on his dad, Norv Turner's offense, there's a lot of intermediate routes.
I'm glad we're talking receivers. You had made a statement earlier in the show about McLaurin and kind of being their number one receiver without having.
He is their number one.
Right.
Yeah.
He is their number one
Sure.
without having that ideal number one receiver size. I do know they have a receiver who does have some size. I want to ask you about him, but hold that thought for a minute because I want to remind everybody about our friends from PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of our Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan. That's their motto. You got to check them out, read their stuff at PHLSportsNation.com. Find them on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. We'll pause real quick here for a word from our other great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. And if you do go into Sky Motor Cars, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get the best deal. So, Greg, last year was the first year for the kid Antonio. Is it Gandy Golden or Golden
Yes,
Gandy?
Gandy Golden.
Gandy Golden, who has size, right? Out of Liberty. I mean, that was what kind of got him on the radar, is the size that he has. I know he was hurt last year for a little bit, but when you watched him on tape, did you see anything that stands out as far as whether or not he can play in this league and be that bigger target?
I mean, I liked his tape coming out. I think right now, barring a great training camp, he would not be among their top three. Again, we have to go through training camp. I think they're top three now. I know Samuel just had some surgeries, but let's assume he's healthy.
Right.
Adam, is he? I don't know what the surgery was. Is he supposed to be ready?
Yeah, I don't know the timeline yet, though. I don't know.
Let's assume,
Yeah.
I think they're in an ideal world. I think for them, it'd be McLaurin, Samuel, and Kelvin Harmon, because Kelvin Harmon is kind of one of those tough guys. He's an intermediate guy. Look, they drafted Brown in the second round, so they clearly believe that they might still like Gandy Golden, but I don't think they necessarily see him as part of the mix right now. He would need a really good training camp, I would think, to be factored in there.
How do you think they'll use Samuel?
It's a great question. He's one of those guys. They're certainly not going to announce how they're going to use him, other than to say he's a versatile piece.
But can you line him up in a position and say you're this, or do you have to move him?
You don't have to move him, but I think you can move him.
What I'm saying is, can he be effective if you were to just say, all right, you're our Z, you're going to line up and play Z?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, first of all, the Z is the movement guy.
Right, well, that's true.
Z is the motion guy.
Right.
McLaurin predominantly lined up at X a year ago, and I'm sure, since it's the same coaching staff, that he'll predominantly be the X.
Right.
So Samuel will be the Z, and he'll line up all over. And I think they see him that way because, again, that puts pressure on the defense. It's it becomes, where's Samuel?
Oh, it was a groin injury for Samuel. I don't know. I don't know that he's having surgery on it.
I thought he did, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, he just I know he missed some practice time, but I don't know that he had surgery. But so Greg, with Samuel, we've seen him carry the football. You talked about him being a Z guy. He's been with Scott Turner before, and obviously, they know him. That's why he's there. It's a lot of money. $11.5 million a year is a lot for a receiver like this, jack of all trades guy. Is he sort of like could you use him on deeper routes when you've watched his tape? Do they do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he's Curtis Samuel. He's the Ohio State kid, right?
Yes, he is.
Yeah. That's what he did that in college. He played in the backfield. He carried the ball. He played receiver in college. This is not new to him. This is what he's done for a long time. So, I think he's a versatile piece. Well, he's not a burner. I think he can run vertical routes. I think you can line him up anywhere. And I think that's the plan. Again, you're trying to put pressure on the defense. You're trying to make the defense locate and identify and decide how they want to play him. So, I think that's clearly what you want to do, and obviously, as Adam said, Scott Turner's familiar with him. He was in Carolina with him for, I think, a year or two, whatever it was. So yeah, he's a real interesting piece. I think, Harmon was hurt all of last year. He missed the season, did he not?
Oh, Kelvin Harmon?
Yeah, I believe he did. He missed last season.
Yeah, he was on NFI. Yeah, he didn't play. And then they had Steven Sims, who had the ACL, who would later come back. I think it was
one of those.
Yeah,
was it Steven Sims? One of the Sims actually had, and I wish I could remember. I feel terrible. Actually played well
I think
It was Cam Sims, the big kid from Alabama, I think was the kid who had to play.
Yeah. But
I thought Cam Sims was Auburn. Was he Alabama? My
Cam
fault.
Sims, I believe, is Alabama.
Okay. Yeah. Either way, actually, at different times last year, I thought Steven Sims also played well.
Yes.
He gave him a little bit of a vertical.
Sims came back later.
Yeah,
and he had to play. Yeah.
But I mean,
no
Cam
relation.
Cam Sims, by the way, he's a big kid. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy I was thinking of because he caught 32 balls.
Right.
And they've got a lot of interesting wide receivers. They've got all types too.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an interesting offense. And I think it's coordinated well. We know what Scott Turner is. It's very much like his dad. It starts with the run game, but they want to throw off play action. They do want to throw it down the field. But they've also got other pieces. They got Thomas, who's developed into a really good short to intermediate tight end. You'll see packages for J.D. McKissick, who's a very, very good receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot they can do. And I think Fitzpatrick gives you the ability to do that because he's been around and he's smart. So it's not like you're starting from scratch.
Right.
He's an aggressive thrower, Greg. The thing that teams would point out to me is that, now obviously we know sometimes he forces throws, but his arm strength, it doesn't have a gun, but it seems to be good enough. Is that what it showed to you?
Yeah, it is. I mean, he's not a gun thrower, but
right.
That's the thing, the balance you have to find with Fitzpatrick. He's an aggressive thrower. He's a turn it loose guy. You like that. But now he's on a team with a really good defense. And the last thing you want to do with a really good defense is in the third quarter, if you're up 17-10, is to force a throw. And again, it sounds crazy, and this is not the way the NFL has evolved, but this is where a punt is a throwaway and a punt is your best move, and that's, again, now you're trying to get that through Ryan Fitzpatrick's head.
Let's close it out with this, because regardless of what we're talking about, I mean, obviously Washington is trying to paint a picture of a competition here between Fitzpatrick and Tyler Heineke, who played in the playoff game.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be a competition.
No, but I did want your thoughts though on I'm sorry, Taylor. I think I said Tyler. Yes. Taylor Heineke. What you saw from him?
He played really well in the playoff game. I thought they did a really good job in defining reads and throws for him against Tampa's defense. And I thought he played really well, threw the ball well. Like I said, a lot of throws were there to be made. Again, he made them. And I think that it's very interesting. I just finished reading, and it was actually a very good book by Geoff Duncan. You know Geoff, Adam?
Yeah, very well. He's a great guy.
From New Orleans?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know he wrote the book Peyton and Breeze?
That's right. Yeah.
I just finished it. And it was actually a really good book. I'm going to get in touch with him, let him know that I really enjoyed it. But there was a thing with Sean Payton talking about when you evaluate given plays, is it the player or the play? So in other words, if you throw up a 50-50 ball to Michael Thomas and he jumps over the corner, it's the player. If you design a really nice play and it breaks down the defense, that's the play. The joke was that, Breeze's son could have made the throw on those, So the thing is I thought I'm making this point because I thought with Heineke in that playoff game, they did a great job with plays. So the plays were there, the throws were there to be made. Takes nothing away from Heineke. You still have to make them. But he played well in it, and he showed enough mobility where if you put him out there, he could do some things with his legs. But I think barring anything unforeseen, the job is Fitzpatrick's.
Agreed.
All right. That'll be the last word on Washington. We will continue this with part 3 on Monday morning. We will diagnose the New York Giants. Greg Cosell will be back with us, and then we'll finish out the 4-part series again with Greg as we will finish it out on the Eagles, and that'll be next Thursday morning. So looking forward to more previews, more NFC East, and getting closer to training camp. So that'll do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. Big thanks to our friend and our producer, Hunter Brody. Check out his YouTube channel. It's called Sports Talk with Broads. Check him out on Twitter @Broads81 and his website, broadsmedia.com. Thanks to Greg Cosell again. And for Adam Caplan, I'm Geoff Mosher. And thank you for flying with us inside the bird.